Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me. We are on the crux of the end of 2023. Oh my God. New Year's Eve. So 2023, I don't know about you, but it was quite a packed year. I think many of us, most of us, were happy to see 2020 go by. 2022 wasn't the best year. 2023 was not bad. It was a busy year for me. A lot of incredible things happened. The energy stepped up. And I sort of looked at 2023 as a prep year for 2024. So I'm looking forward to what's going to happen this next year. Everything is in our world here has been working like fiends to get the foundation established for what's going to take place in 2024 as far as what we're doing with healing and sound and research and global connection of consciousness and stuff like that. We've met an extraordinary series of very high-level people with an understanding of science, medicine, psychiatry, psychedelic therapy, holistic medical viewpoints, scientists and research investors. That's what 2023 has been for us, is meeting the next round of higher quality people who have shown up. So that sort of shows me the trend that the universe is tipping its hat and saying, yes, whatever you're doing, do more of that, because I'm sending you the good people and the good connections and introducing you to the right people. That kind of thing is good. It's excellent. So, and in light of that, so I was going to do a broadcast on the tarot. It's been a long-term interest of mine, a passionate interest of mine. I collect tarot decks. This is the latest one I just got. All the way back into the 60s when I first was introduced to the tarot and began a deep study. However, the reference books and manuals that I needed to flesh out what I needed to talk about, because I don't know it all in detail off the top of my head. Those books, some were in storage and some I can't find, so I reordered some. And that will be either next week or the week after. But today, what struck me in through my news feeds is sort of a revitalization of the question of the Schumann resonance. And most of us are familiar with the Schumann resonance concept of 7.83 hertz somewhere in the atmosphere somehow. But the details of it and the history of it fleshes that picture out and points to the direction of where this is going and how it relates directly to what we're trying to do here, as far as the concept of the global mind link idea. I may spend part of the next week revitalizing that concept as well. The real reason why we're here, to bring in various scientific studies that support the 100th monkey idea and the quantum physics idea and the collective unconscious idea and the two or more gathered in his name idea that opens a doorway to higher levels of information and experience that no one person could have access to. There's power in numbers. There's power in alignment of consciousness, and how you accomplish that alignment has always been a sort of left up to chance to some degree in the past. The best that you could hope to get is long-term meditators living in a monastery away from the world who have known each other for decades and have meditated to the same teaching. They have the highest possibility of reaching the same meditative state together, where they're now in the ballpark concept. All you need to do is get brainwaves into the same ballpark and they suck together, from the coupled oscillator idea. You get them close enough and they want to synchronize. So if you get a number of people with the same understanding of meditation, that studied the same teachings, did the same kind of meditation techniques, and they did it for 30 years each, and they all know each other deeply well, you put those people in a room and this coupled oscillator network establishes immediately, and it's more likely that their brain waves would all synchronize up to the same state naturally. But aside from that special circumstance, if you get a bunch of strangers together to meditate online for world peace, then it's like herding cats. No two people know the same concept of meditation. Everybody's on a different plane of how well they can meditate or where they go with that. It's it's a nice idea, but it lacks the focus necessary to make the true changes that everybody is there for. And I'm saying that when you add science to the mix, which is what's unique about the 21st century, is our technological scientific know-how with unbelievably great levels of precision that have never been possible before, both at the one end of measuring brainwaves of long-term meditators to see what happens in the brain when you go into these enlightenment states. And at the other end, high-tech equipment that can generate sophisticated binaural beat brainwave entrainment pulses through headphones that can entrain your brainwaves to any pattern we want. So we will entrain you to the patterns we saw on the EEG machines with the meditators. When we see what that brain picture looks like, we can entrain to that exact brain picture and cut out years of sitting on your butt trying to figure out what you're supposed to do. You can't figure out what you're supposed to do with figuring. It doesn't come from up here. It's a process of trying and trying and trying until this fatigues out. And as soon as it fatigues out, the doors open. So it's the new high-tech science of meditation, of consciousness expansion. The high-tech approach, in this case, using sound waves and electromagnetic fields, is a new sort of form of meditation. Meditation has always meant I have to sit on my butt in a room and figure out what I'm supposed to do to get myself out of my own way. That's been the definition of meditation. You do this process every day and year after year. Finally, you start to get a handle on it. The hope of high-tech meditation based on brainwave entrainment is to cut out the mystery of what am I supposed to do by placing your brainwaves smack dab in the middle of that state so that you can see what it's like viscerally, which is where you have to see it anyhow. It can't come from here. So the brain entrainment, if it's done correctly, this is dissolved. And this opens up quickly. And that's the point. The point is, how do we do that in order to shortcut the process so that we're not wasting a lot of time in unnecessary activities? And so hold that thought when we start to talk about the Schumann resonance, which is this sort of electromagnetic field resonance in the cavity space between the surface of the Earth and the ionosphere, which is high up in the atmosphere. This was first, the idea first came from this guy, Winfried Otto Schumann, back in 1952. He's the first one to conceive of the concept that there is there's a cavity space. So here we've got the surface of the Earth, and we have the atmosphere that comes up. And the atmosphere has got a number of different layers that all have different names. The troposphere and the stratosphere and all that. And all the way out to the end here is the ionosphere and the electromagnetic envelope. So the electromagnetic envelope and the ionosphere are closely aligned because of the concept of electromagnetism. You can't have an electrical field without a magnetic field at right angles to it automatically. And you can't run, so for instance, you can't run electricity through a wire without having a magnetic field at right angles to that. That's how you make an electromagnet. On the other hand, if you have a wire passing through a magnet that has a hole in it, and you spin the magnet, you generate an electrical field in the wire, and that's how generators work. Translate that to your nervous system, the brain and the nervous system that is firing ions and electricity down these nerves on a constant basis. You have a biomagnetic field at right angles. And when you think about the blood vascular system, which is also incredibly networked throughout the whole system, filled with blood moving, and what's in the blood that makes it red is the hemoglobin in the red blood cells. The hemoglobin uses elemental iron atoms, chock full of iron atoms, because iron on the periodic table has the strongest affinity towards oxygen than any other element on the periodic table. The two of them bind powerfully together and fill each other's outer shells properly so they reach a stable configuration of iron oxide. So once again, we've got iron on the periodic table is the only element of the periodic table with magnetic properties. You can't make magnets out of tin, or you can't make magnets out of titanium. You can't make magnets out of lead. You can only make magnets out of iron. You can refine iron into, steel. Still has magnetic properties. There is one other element on the periodic table that has magnetic properties. That's the rare earth elements. And they're called rare earth because they're rare, so they're way more expensive. However, they do make more powerful magnets. So it was the rare earth magnets that I used in my practice for 40 years when I was doing biomagnetic therapy, exposing the body to certain field strengths of a magnetic field that would have a reaction in the body to its biochemistry and its pH and the ions that make up biochemistry in your organs and glands. And you can have a direct effect on organ and gland function with a magnetic field of a certain strength. So when we and since the brain is electrical with brain waves and all the rest, when we've got in the blood system iron particles that are magnets moving, we generate an electrical field from our blood. So we're generating a magnetic field from the nerves and generating an electrical field from the blood circulating, and the two of those mingle together. So that means that we have a bioelectromagnetic field that extends out from our bodies and intermingles with the bioelectromagnetic field of other living things that also generate the same, particularly other people. And as soon as you're within 6 feet of each other, the heart field that extends 6 feet out mingles with another person's heart field, and we have a coupled oscillator network that begins to synchronize body functions in both those people. And if we have 3 people or 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people, we get the same effect, except it's a larger coupled oscillator network that can do bigger and more powerful work. And then if we can entrain the brain waves of all those people to exactly and precisely the same place, we align all of the biomagnetic fields of all the other systems in the body controlled by the brains of all those people into the mix. The entire network gets aligned, centered on the brain, because the brain drives the system. And we have the possibility of opening up doorways of energy, information, and influence on the quantum field from consciousness itself when it's amplified that way. That's what these are all about, these live streams. That's the purpose of listening to the soundtrack at the end, to align everyone's brainwaves to precisely and exactly the same place. So with that in mind, we have, so what Schumann back in 1952 was realizing is that there's a space between the surface of the Earth and the inside edge of the ionosphere, which is charged electromagnetic particles, ions. And an ion, by the way, remember, is a free electron that's split off of an atom out of its outer shell. So if you have, all of the atoms in the periodic table are to some degree unstable, some more than others, like the electrons in the outer shells of something like uranium are very unstable and easy to knock them out of their shells and make them free, floating around, not attached to an atom anymore. That means that they're an ion. The electrons are negatively charged, and the nucleus has protons and neutrons. The protons are positively charged, electrons are negatively charged, the neutrons are neutral. So positive, negative, and neutral, the law of 3. The law of 7 is the 7 notes in the octave, sound waves. So electromagnetism and sound is the yin-yang of everything in the universe. The sound part of that has been hidden in science and not acknowledged. Science has taught all of us that the electromagnetic portion is what everything is made of. Photons, electromagnetic field effect, the electromagnetic spectrum chart of all frequencies in the universe that make everything up. But that doesn't take into account the yin-yang part of sound, which we know is pure energy moving through a medium of some kind, and it has pressure. And the mediums are gas, like air molecules, fluids, like water, and solids, like wood and bone and things like that. Sounding board. Sound travels through water 5 times better than it does through air. sound travels through a solid 5 times better than it does through water. Because the molecules of a solid are more densely packed and more easily to transmit the vibration frequencies than air molecules, which are dispersed more. So 70% water, 30% minerals and bone, the perfect medium for transmitting sound, this body. Brain waves that drive it, electromagnetic fields, and blood circulation with iron particles and all of that stuff, electromagnetic fields and sound fields generated together, mixed up in how the body works. So Schumann, back in 1952, realized that because we got this cavity space between the ion field of negatively charged electromagnetic particles, ions, this electromagnetic barrier is a shield against the solar wind and high energy particles and gamma rays and the rest that come from the plasma fields issuing forth from explosions of the sun. The solar wind is the force of electromagnetic energy exiting from the surface of the sun because it's a massive continuing nuclear explosion that's constantly going on. And the force of that explosion is extending out into space as atoms strip to their component parts, and the ions are streaming away from the sun with a powerful force field that that force field called the solar wind strikes a planetary electromagnetic field, ion field and magnetic envelope, it blows it back like a comet tail away from the sun. It's so powerful. And the leading edge is a highly disturbed vibrating field of ions that vibrate exactly within the range of human hearing. And that's what NASA collected as sound recordings from space from all the outer planets. And they gave those to me to research back in 1989. And I produced 11 CDs of NASA space sounds. And even to this day, I'm the only person in the world that was ever given to research the effects on the deep unconscious mind. But be that as it may, the solar wind is going to strike this ionosphere and bend it back like a comet tail. But the ionosphere is strong enough to resist the radiation coming from all of that and protect life on Earth so we can be alive. If the ionosphere was to collapse, we would all fry like in a microwave oven. We would bake and boil. All life on Earth would cease to exist. So it's an important thing. The other interesting thing is it acts like a mirror to electromagnetic fields that are trapped in this cavity space. I mean, this cavity space is like 600 miles, so it's a big space. There's lightning that goes on the surface of the Earth, right? There's lightning storms everywhere in the world. As a matter of fact, there are more than 2,000 lightning storms happening at any given moment on the Earth, somewhere. Earth is a big place. And that means that there's 50 lightning strikes every second somewhere on Earth. Every second, 50 powerful lightning strikes are happening. And if you've ever been around a lightning strike, it's unbelievably powerful. And right afterwards, you smell this ozone smell because The lightning is so powerful that it strips the atoms into their component parts, and what you end up with is free-floating ions. But you also get this bounce effect of the electricity. So now we got this electrical charge that's bouncing off the earth and flying off into the sky. And it hits the undersurface edge of the ionosphere and bounces off and bounces back towards the earth. When it hits the earth, it bounces back. And now it's bouncing back and forth around this whole cavity. All 50 lightning strikes every second, forming a continuous standing wave of vibrational frequencies. Because if you take the speed at which electromagnetic energy would bounce off the earth, it has a certain base physics speed that the electromagnetism moves. And we have a known distance between the surface of the earth and the inside surface of the ionosphere. So with a quick mathematical calculation, you can figure out what's the frequency of this bounce. How long does it take to go back and forth and form this big standing wave? And the answer to that is 7.83 hertz. It's this. 7.83 hertz is the predominant standing wave based on the speed of electromagnetic transmission in the bounce and the distance the bounce has to go inside this cavity space. So in 1952, this physicist Winfried Schumann, put the whole picture together. He recognized that the space between the solid conducting Earth's surface and the hot, rarefied conducting ionosphere, some 100 kilometers up, would behave like a cavity capable of reflecting electromagnetic waves, a waveguide. Simultaneously, he realized that the electric currents created by lightning strikes would be able to naturally excite this cavity and create resonances. Just as a musical instrument has frequencies at which the waves within it vibrate, creating sounds, the electromagnetic waves traveling within the space between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere would lead to the resonant vibration, a specific set of frequencies for the cavity itself. So if we look at, say, a flute or a clarinet where we've got a tube and we blow into that tube, we get a fundamental resonance of the tube itself without pushing any of these buttons. Just the diameter of the tube and the length of the tube is going to set the frequency. And there's going to be harmonics and overtones that automatically spin from that frequency according to the laws of music theory, the laws of acoustic resonance. Because in the natural world, there's no such thing as a sound wave that's devoid of harmonics. Only a man-made tone, like a sine wave, can create that. An electronic oscillator that creates a pure tone, an oscillator tone, a sine wave, can accomplish that, a pure tone with no harmonics. The harmonics that spin in the natural world, based on the math of octaves and harmonics, thirds and fifths and sevenths and ninths and thirteenths, and those are the harmonic series. The harmonic series that arises spontaneously out of a certain frequency, like the frequency that would arise inside of this hollow tube, spin out a series of harmonics and overtones that are mathematically related to this fundamental and give it its timbre. That's why a flute sounds different than a clarinet, and a clarinet sounds different than an oboe. It's got to do with what they're made of, what the diameter versus the length is. So each one has a characteristic kind of thing, and in nature, everything is that way. My voice is that way. I have a cavity space in my mouth, and the shape of the inside of my mouth is unique to me based on my DNA pattern. So my voice sounds like me because the cavity resonance space of vibrating my vocal cords by blowing wind across them gives me my characteristic sound. Therapeutically, how we used that was when we went through the big process of hooking you up to a heart rate variability device that could see the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system out of balance, where you're running a fight or flight response all the time, and do a sound sweep through your body until we found a frequency that rebalanced it. And now we've got this frequency. If we had you sing that frequency and we recorded your voice singing that frequency with 3D microphones and played it back in all kinds of different octaves, slowed down, at a certain point you can't recognize this as your voice anymore because it's slowed down so much, but your unconscious mind can easily recognize it because it designed your vocal cords in the first place from a blueprint in your DNA. So it would be a technique, a scientific technique that's highly precise to awaken the deep unconscious mind directly through pattern recognition of the unique pattern of harmonics and overtones that only my voice produces, that part deep inside designed from scratch. Of course, it's going to wake up and go, oh, I recognize that. I did that. And that's where the healing is. That's where the answers are. That's where my guru sits with the answers, that part I'm trying to get to when I meditate. The part we're trying to get to with all this advanced work with high-tech, meditation technologies, brain entrainment, synchronicity of the hemispheres, and all the rest. So this cavity of the Earth's space between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere is like a clarinet that's bent into a circle, so to speak. A whole planetary system where this, as the atmosphere and the ionosphere, bounce these electromagnetic signals back and forth in a standing wave of 7.83 hertz. It's an electromagnetic field, and that electromagnetic field permeates every square inch of the Earth's surface because these electromagnetic fields are bouncing off of the Earth and bouncing off the inner surface of the ionosphere on a continual, constant basis, right? 60 lightning strikes every second. It's continual. Sooner or later, every square centimeter of every particle of the surface of the Earth is going to be hit, and you're going to be there with your nervous system being influenced by this 7.83 hertz electromagnetic field, which just so happens to be a borderline state between alpha and theta, depending on which textbook you read, because this concept of brain waves, beta, alpha, theta, delta brain waves, and that each one of those brackets has a brainwave range that goes with it. So beta is 13 hertz up to 38 hertz, and then we've got gamma at 40 hertz. And so 13 hertz is the borderline between beta and alpha. And then it goes down 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7. Somewhere between 8 and 7 is the borderline between alpha and theta. Alpha mental, theta emotional, dreaming sleep, internal holographic mental function, and alpha. The borderline between that is a state of its own. And that's also where the flow state happens that we discussed before. That a lot is going on in that zone that everybody overlooked. We started working with these borderline states 25 years ago and working with them with patients and recognized them as brainwave states of their own along with epsilon that I discovered in 1989, and then there was gamma that was discovered, and hypergamma at 100, and lambda at 200, and then there was the default mode network below the epsilon that I had discovered. I extrapolated below that into the iota frequencies that we discussed in a previous episode. That's how we ended up with 21 different brain states that we recognize and that we work with practically in a clinical setting. So this concept that the Earth is surrounded by an electromagnetic envelope, and this area here of oxygen and nitrogen, this little zone here, this thin membrane of glowing here that supports all life on the planet, surrounded by a protective envelope of electromagnetic fields, and the ionosphere, are subjected to weather patterns on Earth that create these lightning strikes. So remember, there's 60 of these lightning strikes every second, so they're just showing one every once in a while. But you can see these reflective patterns bouncing around, forming these standing waves. And the standing waves are 7.83 hertz. Those standing waves are going to interact with other standing waves. So you can sort of see that as those lightning strikes bounce around, they're interacting with each other. And that's where all these harmonics and overtones are coming from. But this is continual. So if you can imagine 60 of these every second going off, this would be a stable standing wave of immensely complicated electromagnetic field patterns. So in reality, this 7.83 hertz standing wave, which is the fundamental, the one with the highest amplitude, has these lower amplitude subfrequencies that are the harmonics and overtones that spin from this automatically and give the entire cavity space a timbre, which means not only is it 7.83 hertz, but it's got all these harmonics and overtones that flesh it out and make it a timbral tone, like the reason why a flute sounds like a flute and not an oboe. The uniqueness of that cavity space makes a certain sort of sound. So the current project that I've just completed, and which is being released tomorrow, by the way, is another album on this, the Schumann Resonance. There's going to be a 1.0 and a 2.0. The 1.0 is the 7.83 hertz as a brainwave entrainment frequency. So the interesting thing here is that, the Schumann Resonance, 7.83 hertz, happens to be an electromagnetic brainwave frequency. And we already know that, great nature doesn't make any big mistakes here. It's all coincidence with a capital C. The idea that the lightning strikes in the cavity space and the bounce speed equals a brainwave frequency, and it's a standing wave brain frequency of electromagnetism, and the activity in my nervous system and in my brain is electromagnetic, and there's this property of coupled oscillators where my brain is constantly looking for patterns of resonance that it can entrain to, means that there is a dominant Earth brainwave pulse. That's why I call this the Earth's brainwave. Now, previous people have called it the Earth's heartbeat, but I think that's incorrect. It's the Earth's brainwaves because it links straight to a brainwave state between alpha and theta at 7.83 hertz. We know that close to that at 7.5 hertz is the flow state. And the flow state is going to be unique to any individual because everybody's brainwave ranges are unique to you. They do fall on bell curve studies. That's why this textbook and this textbook over here might disagree on what's the range of alpha. This one will say, oh, range of alpha is between 13 hertz and 8. And this one over here says, no, it's 13 hertz and 7. So I split the difference at 7.5 somewhere, but it's going to drift for an individual. What we do know is that 7.83 hertz falls in that range, and it's also the range between the borderline between alpha and theta where research has shown us the flow state exists. So there's something very closely aligned with the flow state and the Schumann resonance, that the global Earth entrainment of this brainwave frequency generated by the Earth cavity at 7.83 hertz entrains all biological life forms on Earth that have a brain and a nervous system, entrains all of them together to the same state of consciousness, a zone where the flow state happens, where it becomes easier to let go and align with the whole. It makes it easier to form symbiotic relationships that way. So I don't think it's a big, sort of mistake or coincidence that the Earth has a dominant brainwave frequency to make it easier for all organic life on the planet to synchronize up together as a symbiotic whole. Only human beings are resisting that force and stepping outside of this universal rule of cooperation. Human beings are still stuck in a primitive form of competition and warfare, when in reality, the more evolved forms work together in a symbiotic whole. So it would be that the next soundtrack coming out after this one, this one is powerful. We'll hear some of it today. The soundtrack today we're going to listen to at the end is taken from this new soundtrack, the Schumann Resonance soundtrack. Schumann 2.0, the next one I'll put out, I will flesh it out with all these harmonics so we can hear what that timbre is. This is a grand experiment. Nobody's done this before. It's going to take quite a bit of work to create multi-layered binaural beat sound waves in a soundtrack. So that will be Schumann Resonance 2.0. But once again, the concept of an electromagnetic field generating brain tissue where the speed of the brain waves is closely aligned with different states of consciousness, and a planetary system that is generating a brainwave entrainment frequency that could entrain a certain state of consciousness would be a valuable thing to use as a meditation tool, right? To allow that natural entrainment process with what the Earth is putting out as their brain frequency, to allow that to happen and not resist it, to allow yourself to fall into the open, empathic, holistic sort of connection with all living things on the planet, mediated by the taskmaster of the Earth itself that's entraining everybody naturally with electromagnetic fields at 7.83 hertz. So this concept of the Schumann resonance being a brainwave frequency, which means that this Schumann resonance represents a state of consciousness itself that the Earth resonates at, the Earth is exhibiting a state of consciousness. That's why I call this Earth's brainwave, not heartbeat. As we were discovered before when I discussed iota, where I speculated that there must be, the pattern must continue below epsilon, which turned out to be so. They discovered default mode network below epsilon. Then I extrapolated. If that's the pattern, then it means that should be brain frequencies below default mode network. So that became the creation of the iota brain frequencies. And then it was discovered 15 years later that Earth has a heartbeat. One mysterious pulse in the Earth every 26 seconds, which falls right in the iota 1 bandwidth of 20 to 40 seconds, one brain pulse every 20 to 40 seconds, and the Earth is exhibiting one pulse every 26 seconds, which is an iota pulse. So there's another pulse that is linking all living things together into a biosphere, homogeneous entrainment. So that's why I call the Schumann resonance the Earth's brain frequency and not the Earth's heartbeat. I think we already have Earth's heartbeat in the iota frequency beat that's happening on the Earth. But all living life, a delicate balance of all living things that form a thin layer of the biosphere, all being entrained by this electromagnetic frequency pulse standing wave, and the pulses that are arriving from inside the Earth itself as a vibration frequency. The two master things that we use in biotuning, right? Sound chair, sound table, delivering the vibration portion into the sensors of your vibration sense network, and brain entrainment up here, and aligning those two together. We see something similar here. We see the Schumann resonance aligning the brain waves, and this mystery pulse of one pulse every 26 seconds coming out of the Earth as a big vibration, not electromagnetic, but a vibrational pulse, synchronizes those two systems naturally, brain waves and vibration sense network in your skin and joints and bones. And our entire biological system, the brain and the Earth itself, work on the same frequencies. Nikola Tesla, this guy was no slouch. Yeah. So he was around during that time. He must have known. He probably figured it out before anybody else. This is what the Schumann resonance frequencies look like normally in a spectrograph. But recently, in the last 5 years, odd new patterns have been showing up. This was June 18th, 2023. Spectacularly, strangely different. You have to understand that the electromagnetic envelope of the ionosphere is subject to fluctuations based on what's happening with the solar wind. So the solar wind is coming out of the sun in a steady stream. The sun is a stable thing, but it does go through 11-year cycles of maximum and minimum sunspot activity. And at solar maximums, there will be these solar storms that happen that eject massive, huge electromagnetic field arcs, that the Earth as a planet could fit inside of one of these big arcs. And these arcs extend out into space. And if they happen to be pointed towards the Earth, a huge electromagnetic pulse from the sun is heading towards the Earth. The ionosphere will absorb that, but the blow of this massive ejection from the sun striking the ionosphere is like ringing a bell. I mean, it hits the ionosphere, and the ionosphere bulges inwards and then out and forms a huge ripple pattern that ripples all the way around the Earth. So the ionosphere is a sphere, and the solar wind is hitting one part of it and creating these circular ripple patterns that ripple all the way around the Earth and hit each other and ripple back and create a reverberating circuit. And those ripple patterns now are different than the stable 7.83 hertz. The 7.83 hertz is when the system is not disturbed. There are minor ejecta from the sun that create momentary little ripple patterns where the 7.83 will go maybe up to 11 or down or a little bit, but that's temporary and will restabilize the 7.83. When they talk about 7.83, they're talking about sort of a bell curve study of the average frequency that will have fluctuations built within it. But the major fluctuations, like a major event from a solar ejection, could cause the 7.83 to completely disappear and become a whole bunch of different things that are crazy and strange and unstable. And you would expect that that would have some kind of an effect on all organic life on the planet, particularly the organic life that has the most highly developed brain system that would be most significantly influenced by an entrainment to wild fluctuating frequencies. I remember one of the things that Gurdjieff, the mystic in the 20s, who came over in the 20s, the first one who ever came over with the secrets from the East, made statements that extraplanetary influences like the sun and the moon and other planets in the solar system at different places in their orbits would exert electromagnetic effects on our atmosphere, on the ionosphere. And you might have a series of influences that all come together at the same time and form a major disturbance in the electromagnetic field envelope around the Earth. And those disturbances would make large masses of people feel the undeniable desire to destroy one another's existence and have war. So, from his standpoint, disturbances of humanity in large groups that cause strife and war and things like that are nothing more than organic systems responding to disturbances in the ionosphere field from extraplanetary influences like solar activity and where the planets are at the present moment. There's no question that this is extraordinary. And there are forces on Earth that where I'm trying to get to at this point is that everything in the universe works two ways. As I've said before, if I'm asleep and passive, then my life is a series of me reacting to things that happen to me by chance. The universe will roll the dice and things will happen. I'll have to respond to those things, and that's the story of my life. But once I wake up to what it's all about, and I wake up to my place in the universe, and that I have a place and a duty and a task here, a job to do, and I get about the business of doing that and create a focus in my consciousness to achieve some goal, I now am putting pressure on the universe, and the universe becomes passive and responds to me. In other words, what I issue forth as a force of visualization or will to achieve something of importance in my life that becomes a force that comes from me, and the universe responds to that. As soon as that pressure from me stops, the universe becomes active and I become passive again. And for most of us who have any sort of spiritual development at all, our life is a dance back and forth with the universe in exactly that. I fall back asleep. I go into my regular asleep groove. And the universe deals me a bunch of different random crazy things that I have to respond to. And then I wake myself up and I put pressure on the universe, and it starts to conform to me. And then as time goes on and I get older, I learn something, hopefully. I learn what this game is. I learn what the tango is. I learned that that the more that I can keep my awakeness up and my place in the scheme of things and what I'm here for, and that I'm focusing on that and I'm doing that and I'm devoting my life to that, and I'm not getting distracted and falling asleep. The more I do that, the more it accelerates and accelerates, and the right people show up and the right things happen by synchronicities, all because I'm putting a pressure on the universe to achieve this goal, and the universe is my partner to make that happen. As soon as I release that pressure and go back to sleep and float, then the universe starts to roll the dice because it's without direction. Nobody's telling it what to do. It's like me riding a horse. If I don't tell the horse what to do, then the horse is just going to start wandering around at random, and I'll end up God knows where, off my trail. But if I'm focused and I'm telling the horse what to do, the horse will do what I tell it to do. So what I'm getting at with this is that the bigger picture here of the promise of the Schumann resonance is that as we do these mind link experiments together and create a huge conscious pressure wave of many brain waves all synchronized up together at the same exact brain state, we're putting a huge amount of pressure on the universe with that. And it's an electromagnetic field effect as part of that, because our consciousness is intimately associated with aligning brain waves a certain way. And we're aligning all of our brain waves in all a synchronized brainwave electromagnetic pattern that is broadcasting out right up into the ionosphere. It's connecting with the Schumann resonance. And I'm thinking that we have the possibility of affecting what's going on in that Schumann cavity from our standpoint, instead of us being constantly passive to a 7.83 hertz frequency that's coming at us from the ionosphere. If we put pressure back in return by aligning our consciousness together, I believe that we can change what's going on in the ionosphere that would in turn create a new pattern that would entrain all biological life to a higher conscious frequency. In other words, we have the possibility of causing a global electromagnetic entrainment frequency that would affect all life and all people. Not just me. Here's the NIH PubMed article, Human Intelligence, the Brain, and Electromagnetic System Synchronized by the Schumann Resonance Signal. Can you believe it? What a great time to be alive. The human brain is a biological organ. On one hand, it is soft, flexible, and adaptive, but on the other hand, is relatively stable and coherent with well-developed intelligence. In order to retain intelligent thinking in a soft and adaptable organ, there needs to be a constant, globally available synchronization system that continuously stabilizes the brain. Rapid intelligence and reactions requires the electromagnetic signaling system supported by a biochemical system. The Schumann resonance signal provides a brain frequency range matching electromagnetic signal, providing the synchronization needed for intelligence. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Holy moly. It's like, I can't believe they just sort of said that. Like, what? Human intelligence, the brain, and electromagnetic system synchronized by the Schumann resonance. Holy moly. In 2016, the Behavioral Neuroscience and Biomolecular Research Laboratories of Laurentian University, Ontario, published the article Similar Spectral Power Densities Within the Schumann Resonance and a Large Population of Quantitative Electroencephalographic, how's that for a word? Electroencephalographic profiles, EEG profiles, support evidence for Koenig and these two guys who are researchers who had a study. This study provides additional evidence for similarities between human brain activity and the Schumann resonance, drawing conclusions from observing consistent spectral patterns of electromagnetic fields in both systems. The subjects were given an electroencephalogram, an EEG, and compared its patterns with graphs of fluctuations in the indicators of the station closest to the experiment, which measures the Schumann resonance. So they're taking volunteers and hooking them up to EEG, and right next to them on the next computer screen is the closest station of them measuring the Schumann resonance fluctuating electromagnetic fields in the ionosphere, and they see that they're linked together. What? Wow. Like, mind-blowing. 9/11 and the Schumann resonance. On September 11, 2001, as the world witnessed the unfolding tragedy of the terrorist attacks, an unprecedented surge in the Schumann resonance occurred. Some researchers believe that this peak reflected the intense emotions and collective shock experienced by humanity during that fateful day. It serves as a reminder of the deep connection between the Earth's energetic field and our collective emotional state. So instead of a reaction to something that caused a big response in people's brains and electromagnetic fields that influenced the Schumann resonance, which is what I'm talking about, us putting pressure back, we are attempting to consciously arrange that event instead of as a reaction to something that happens to us. We're trying to use this as a conscious tool to affect the grand Schumann resonance itself that could then entrain all nervous systems on the planet, because we're putting a pressure wave in there and telling it what to do. The Japan earthquake and resonance. In March 2011, when a devastating earthquake struck Japan, the Schumann resonance witnessed another notable spike. This event showcased the interplay between Earth's geological activities and the resonant frequency. The heightened resonance during such moments highlights the intricate relationship between Earth's energy and human experiences. Collective consciousness and resonance. The Schumann resonance acts as a subtle thread that weaves together the tapestry of collective consciousness. It is believed to influence our thoughts, emotions, and interconnectedness with one another. When the resonance peaks, it is postulated that it may amplify our intuitive abilities, facilitate spiritual experiences, and enhance our empathic connections. This intricate dance between the Earth's resonance and our consciousness invites us to explore the depths of our shared experience, which is just what I'm proposing. That we make this something that is not a random event that causes a response that influences the field, but rather us deciding that we are going to create a response that influences the field, that will then filter out and influence all organic life on Earth from an intention on our part. Schumann Resonance in 2023 and its role in the global transformation. How can we tune our brain frequency? Yeah, that's what we're up to. So each one of us can put pressure through our own conscious efforts of changing our consciousness and putting pressure on the universe to conform. It's just that when we align ourselves together, we have much more power to make that happen. Much more power to return a pressure wave into the quantum field and have it conform. It's why we were created by the universe, to have a partner to dance with. This is the album that's coming out tomorrow. And it's from this album that I've taken today's soundtrack. And with that said, let's take our headphones. So with all these ideas that I spun out here, today's focus is that we are connecting together in order to put pressure into the Schumann Resonance electromagnetic field envelope around the Earth to charge its frequency as a brainwave entrainment module for all life on the planet to see if we can make an effect. That's our job. Here we go. So, Happy New Year to everybody. Coming up tomorrow. I noticed in the chat somebody asked about my car. I didn't realize the car could be seen. This is a Christmas present, a DeLorean. And it's cool because the doors open up, and inside you can see the control panel, the time dimension distortion control panel, and that triangular thing, the Y thing, whatever that was called. Yeah, it's pretty cool, pretty detailed. Anyway, I'm running out of place to put things, so I put it on top of my printer. Didn't realize everybody would be able to see it, but so I'm going to leave the discussion chat panel up for a while, and so I will see you all next week. Peace and joy and health to everybody. I hope this is a banner year for all of you. The best for us and best for the world. Thank you all.